You're tuned into the Unnecessary Harm podcast, where we drill down on issues of substance use and its cultural impact. Your host, Shane Varcoe, Executive Director of the Delgado Institute, with over 40 years experience in youth and community work and a passion for building resilience.
Welcome to the Unnecessary Harm podcast. Always good to have you with us, and for those coming back, our regular subscribers, great to have you with us again, and for those for the first time, welcome on board. Always good to have new listeners. Today's guest is Professor Emeritus of Education and Human Development at George Mason University for nearly 3 decades. Director of the Centre for the Advancement of Public Health. He is a PhD from Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University, along with a 4-decade plus career conducting hundreds of national, state and local prevention projects. That's staggering in itself, which we'll drill down into a bit later on. Also including co-author of the College Alcohol Survey, the nation's longest-running longitudinal assessment of college efforts to address alcohol, drug, tobacco and violence issues. Again, 45 years plus. Also author and editor of Leadership in Drug and Alcohol Abuse Prevention, Insights from Long-Term Advocates in 2019, and developed also the guide to the 8 professional competencies for higher education substance misuse prevention. Very, very, very important as well. Again, key issues in what we're going to talk about today. This 45-year vocational journey in proving what works in prevention has led him to produce a significant piece of literature that flips the script entirely. The recently published book, The Intentional Life, Crafting Your Legacy One Day at a Time, does not simply focus on the cultural and human wrecking ball that is alcohol and other drugs, but rather lifts the gaze of younger generation to intentionally look at vision, legacy, and helping this demographic see beyond what can hinder and to what will create a lasting difference in an increasingly dysfunctional world. Hey, Dr. David S. Anderson, welcome to the Unnecessary Harm podcast, my friend.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Shane. I'm delighted to be here.
It's been a time getting you here, but we're glad you're on board. Looking forward to this deep and significant conversation because of the latitude and longitude, I'll use those terms, and the depth and breadth of your experience. And I'm really excited about the conversation we're going to have today. But as always, with people that come on our program, to a lot of our listeners, you are going to be, who's this guy? You know, where's he come from? What's his story? We've given you an introduction. That's just a bullet point salient issues of your journey, but that's much more going on in your world. So tell us a little bit about, if you can, David, as personally as you want to go, what makes you tick over this, now, not just recently, but what makes you tick, and what did that ticking do to lead you into this incredible investment of 45 years in the space you're in?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the briefest answer to that, and I have to be careful that because it might bring tears, but that's okay. Yeah. Is I remember, you know, as a young person going to church and going to the youth events, and I remember a question. I was probably 15 years old, and the question was, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, I want to make the world a better place. And, you know, right now I'm Professor Emeritus, so I left full-time work 10 years ago. And as my colleagues in Virginia, that's where George Mason University is located, when they said, so we want to honor you, and so now what? And I said, I want to make the world a better place. And it's small steps. It's the low-hanging fruit on the tree, but it's also looking at the grandeur of what a tree could be. We need to fertilize it. We need to nurture it. We need to trim it. So what makes me tick is always wanting to make the world a better place in whatever sphere I'm at. So I've worked on college campuses. Mm-hmm. You know, I've been as far to your part of the world as far as Vietnam and Thailand, and I've worked in Guam and Saipan and Palau and the whole Micronesia on several different occasions. But the humanity throughout the world, the humanity and the common bond that strikes a lot of us is put me in. It keeps me going. And it's not just the glass is half empty versus the glass half full. I do know that the glass is half full and can always be better. We will never get to the end point. We will never get perfection. But I remember, a trainer at one point saying, the sign of a good leader is to manage the boundaries. And that means protecting those around you, whether it's your family or the group you're working with. And it's also, should you, perhaps as a team, perhaps with your vision, seek to expand what you're doing, change the dialogue. Try to manage that, but at the same time, protect from the outside forces. And so whether that's an understanding external forces saying your organization should do this, well, maybe that's not part of what you need to do or want to do. So with all of that, I keep, trying to manage the boundaries, push the envelope. We can do a little better. We can always do a little better. But also as we reflect back, and as you shared some of my biography, thinking about, those were some neat things. But they were also grounded in some guiding principles of, like that survey you cited still goes on. And we have never, ever had funding, but it came from just an idea that a colleague and I, Angelo Gadaletto, he's director of counseling at our university, and I was in charge of the residence halls. We were both working with alcohol and drug misuse prevention. And we said, we wonder what other schools are doing around the country. We developed a sample with research design, and then we did a survey. And then 3 years later, we said, I wonder if things have changed. So we repeated it. And so that became a trend. And now we've done 15, 16 iterations of it. I have new colleagues now. But so to your question, what makes me tick? Always trying to make the world a little bit better, and also being a little translational. So I can look at the research, but how do I translate that so the general public gets it?
Very good.
And how can I take what the general public, whether it's youth or adults, seniors, whatever, how do I take that and translate that to the policymakers? So again, there's no magic bullet. Let me say one other thing that helps to anchor me, and I call it the pyramid of success. Doesn't mean you're going to get successful, but you need all three elements if you're going to make a difference. It's competence, confidence, and commitment. So if you think about that, competence. I don't go to an auto dealer to check out my heart.
Correct.
I don't go to my doctor to see what's wrong with my car. I don't go to my doctor to check my teeth. I want competence. I want someone who is up to date. I want someone who is skilled. That's the competence. Then we want confidence. And all too often, here's where I find a gap. People have the competence, but they don't have the confidence to speak up. Like why should I speak up? What do I know? And then the commitment is going the extra mile. So I'm odd in a way where I officially retired 10 years ago, but I've written 5 books since I left full-time work. I don't need that for a portfolio. I'm not going to get promoted anymore. Right. And books typically are not the books that I write, the technical ones. They're on my website. But they don't make money. That's not what it's about. It's trying to share that knowledge in a translational way and help people stay committed. So competence, the skills, confidence, the belief in yourself, and the commitment to keep on going. So that we can all, and then people find their own marching orders. And that's, to me, that's what's important. You find your own marching orders, you find your own niche. And if part of your aim is to help make your world a little better place, that's all.
Very, very good answer. And I just, again, the number of guests we have on, David, that source a lot of their initiation moments, their instigators, back to an event or an experience when they're young is quite important. And the reason I say that is because I want young listeners in this, and whether you're 15, 16, whether you're 25, and even when you're 45 and 55, because your life is a tale of reinvention and realignment, not because you're trying to perform to get more, but you want to engage so that your community can be more. And that kind of commitment is a lifelong process. And I kept hearing the words of the famous Green Bay Packers coach, Vince Lombardi. I think he said when he was challenged about his pursuit of perfection in his team, he said, "That's a bit harsh, isn't it?" And he said, "Well, okay, it might be a bridge too far, but I find that when my players go hard after perfection, they bump into excellence on the way." And I went, wow, yeah. So it's about setting a boundary that doesn't limit you, but will limit the desire and the heart you have to see things change, but also the boundary that protects and nurtures so that others can experience the very thing you're doing. David, that's a nutshell moment, and I want our listeners perhaps to rewind that and have a listen to that again. I think that's really valuable, what you've shared there, and how you tick, and some of these formative issues are really important. And it may be 15 when it happens, it may be 25, maybe 35, it may be when you retire that this happens. Yeah. But it can happen if you enable that space to be made in your life. And please listen to that, guys. Great thing. That helps me. Yeah, really good. Thank you.
Yeah. So
25.
Go ahead. I think that what you're hitting on is the key point. Is if individuals listen to their own heart, that's what's important. And all too often they don't speak up. They feel like they have to be popular, or have to look a certain way, or have to voice a certain voice. Well, what is it your heart says? And, particularly for a young person, if they're trying to discover what their heart says, then say that. I remember as a young college student, I would hear one point of view, whether it was political or religious, and then I hear another point of view, and both made sense. And then I had to sort that out. What made sense for me moving forward? And I think that's the message I would say is, and again, we're going to talk about this latest book, and people have different points of view that they're sharing. 365 different points of view come in here. Well, what does it make sense for you?
Yeah. No, good. And we'll get to that, which is important because that's where we're going to go today. That's really important. But that journey to that space, I still want to drill down into that and explore some of the aspects and the assets that have helped create that. Now, I want to reiterate again, not to highlight the age of David, but 45 years of experience in the prevention space. This is, particularly for those listening to this podcast who are in the prevention sector, who are in the AOD education space, which many of the people, or recovery space, which many of our listeners are in, then that's a really, really staggering piece of data. 45 years is a tenure issue that cannot be easily just, we'll move through that. No, 45 years.
Yeah.
One of the things about, and I remember speaking at an event, just to echo that, I was speaking at an event for a Mental Health Association in Australia, and I don't have professor qualifications. I don't have lots of letters after my name. That doesn't bother me. But one of the things that they highlighted, which I didn't even think of, made no mention of it, but they noted that I'd had over 40 years working with youth and community, and they said, we don't know anybody who's done that, that's still in that space. And I didn't think about that. And I went, okay, I'm still working with young people, 40 years. But you've been doing this at a architectural level as well as a grassroots level. So I just want to labour that point. Sorry to do that, David. We'll labour that point. We'll keep moving. So you've been able to, in that lengthy piece of time, I don't want to talk about what works, what doesn't work. That's a dichotomy I don't want to kind of throw on the table, because there's a lot of people, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. What I want to ask you though is in that journey the narrative that's emerged, the narrative that indeed has informed a lot of this book that you've written, this latest book you've written. What is it, the proactive and protective narrative that you've seen emerge, version, if you like, over those years when it comes to prevention, when it comes to best practice around alcohol and other drugs? What is it that really shines out in all that process?
There's a simple answer to that.
Yep.
Oh, you want me to give us? No, there is.
No, please. Let's give it to yourself. We'll move on to the next question.
There is a simple answer to that, Shane. And I think we're asking the wrong question. We've been asking the wrong question. Because when we talk about prevention, that's all well intended. But as we think about prevention, we need to be clear, what is it that we are preventing? Are we preventing death, injury, harm to self, harm to others, property damage? What do we prevent? But that's all the negative approach. That's the approach of don't, and by the way, don't. The part that we're missing is, what do we want to promote?
Yeah, it's good.
So, when we think about prevention and we think about drug and alcohol misuse, abuse, substance use disorders, harm, one-time abuse, what are the root causes of that? So what is that from an individual perspective? Some of it might be physical, there's psychological, there's social, there's cultural. So what are some of those root causes? And then how do we address those root causes? Like, if my desire is to go out and be social with others, does that mean I have to have a beer, have wine, have alcohol, or not? And that was part of my own discovery, where it was a Friday night. I was 23 or 24, and the nearest bars were a block or two away. And if I didn't have anything to do, it was Friday night. We're supposed to go socialize. So I would go to the bar and I'd have a beer. And then I thought, and this is before in the United States, this is just as our national initiatives were starting in the early 70s. Our National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism and also on drug abuse started in the early 1970s. That's just 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So there weren't public messages, but I would have a beer. And then I thought, oh, does that mean I have a problem if I'm going to the bar alone? Because I didn't have friends at that point. I had friends that sometimes we'd do things and sometimes we wouldn't. And I would go to the bar. And then it's like, wait a minute. And so this is the budding scientist. And so let's do an experiment. Let's go to the bar, and I'll go to the bar and I'll order a soda. So I did. I ordered a soft drink, and I was hanging out with people. So it was Friday night, social time, people, noise, go home. And how did I feel? Fully satisfied. And so what did I discover? This is my words. Oh, I'm a sociaholic. I like to be around people. I love people. I also like my quiet time. But there's times that I want that stimulation of people, the music, just watching people. So again, that's, do you have to have alcohol or drugs to achieve the aims that you're going for? The flip side is, what are you trying to promote? I wanted to promote healthy decisions. I mean, I remember my very first program that I offered, because out of that discovery, I wanted to do something to communicate with other students. And so I called that program All About Getting a Good Healthy Buzz and Other Ways of Getting High. And so the Residence Hall Lounge was packed with 50 people, and we talked about alternative highs. We talked about running. We talked about reading. We talked about writing and journaling. And, they probably thought they were going to come and get samples, and that's not what it was. But we talked about, and that's what I wanted to do, is change the conversation to say, you have permission to engage in healthy decisions, healthy conversations. And so that was all the foundation, and that's what helps to propel me, how to continue to push that message out. Again, so we talk about prevention, and I fully believe in it, but I also believe in, what are we promoting? What can we say yes to? What can we say yes and yes and yes and keep building?
Correct. And I think that's that answer, and of course the whole principle and around the paradigm, around connectivity is really key. We are created to be social animals.
Yes.
And anything that interferes with genuine, authentic socialization doesn't add to it, but interferes with it is problematic. And excising that from the sector is really important. But more importantly is what you said, that promotion. I want to promote a posture of engagement, not a posture of disengagement, which is what substances do. You disengage. You opt out into another space. So that proactivity is really powerful. And guys listening, as you listen to David, this is a wealth of experience. And he was in the mix, and I'm saying this for you, David. He's in the mix before when everything was just, the 70s, and I was a 70s teenager. So it was like, this is what you did. You just went out and got wasted. In fact, everything revolved around the party, the booze, the sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Drinking
all
brown.
The hardcore rockers, came out of the 70s. I mean, the ones that still got some traction, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Slade, all these groups, they came out of there. Even punk rock was a 70s thing. So it was always about this hedonistic, rebellious, let's just party hard, blah, blah, blah. But we found that clearly, as time's gone on, this doesn't add value to us as human beings.
What's the value added to that? What does it get? Does it help you get to where you intended to go?
Correct. And that's what the the community is supposed to be about. Am I adding value to my neighbor? Am I helping my neighbor become who they can be, or am I taking from them? It may not be a malicious act of assault. I'm going to go after you, but what I do with my conduct can take away from the community I'm in and the potentials and opportunities for others around me, because I'm reckless with the way I live.
So, just a dovetail on that. When you think about movies, we see these on the screen. We see them on our home devices. But there's a lot of the footage that gets on the cutting room floor. So to me, it's just like your human life. What's on the cutting room floor, did it add to the story? So how do these experiences add to your story? How does your choices about drugs or alcohol, your choices about exercise or diet, how do they add to your story for your unique life? You're a unique snowflake moving through this life, this journey. How does that add to it? And to me, it's like a movie. You want pieces to add to the story. Yep,
beautiful. And then you got to ask, how much of the cutting room floor is the movie. I'm just reminded, I'm a big movie buff myself, David. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Final Cut.
It does not ring a bell.
Yeah, it's a Robin Williams movie. It was an exceptional movie. I won't go into the details, but it was basically about in the future that you could have what they call a Zoe implant put into your baby. So it's an implant that starts recording from the day you're born, from the very birth. And at the end of your life, right, then that recording can be edited for your eulogy. And the editors have to be people that don't have a recorder in their head, and which is Robin Williams anyway. But what they were doing, he's seeing all the bad stuff, and he's cutting out. So again, the highlight reel, and this is what I thought was interesting, and going back into your commentary, the highlight reel that you're going to put together at the end of your life, how much is going to be in there that's going to add value to others, that's going to actually mean something and have an echo, have a legacy.
Right.
Have a legacy that matters, which we'll talk about in a moment. My brother, my late brother, again, alcohol and other drugs finally got him in the end. He died at 60, but he used to have a saying that he used all the time, which I really admired. He said, when a person of depth and experience and incredible capacity passes away, dies, he's used the term, another library just burnt down. And what I love about your experience and your journey is that you're a library that has opened itself up in a powerful way, and it's gone, I want others to come in, build on the library, not just borrow from the library, but build onto it and add to it. And I really love that issue. And a lot of young people today, and guys, not having a crack at you at all, just speaking to that younger audience, this is not a criticism, but fad, fashion, flavour, formula, the 4 F words of culture, they get in the way of your ability and to actually drill down into things. And what David has done is not just about his career, he's making a mark, I'm leaving a legacy, look at me. It's how can I add value to my culture and how can I help others add value as well? And I want you to borrow not just from the content of what David's done, but the ethos behind that, the drive, the desire to add value to others, to build community, to build capacity, to build legacy that echoes effectively down the generations. We've got enough bad echoes, guys. We've got enough toxic echoes in our culture right now, and the repercussions of that are staggering, and intergenerational harms. And now, particularly with substance use, we know with the epigenetic factors involved and what happens genealogically, if that's for want of a better word, is quite disturbing. And to arrest that and to reverse that is a behavioural change.
Hey, before we continue, we want to highlight an excellent cousin podcast you should definitely check out. Pathways to Prevention with Dave Clausen. Dave brings incredible, proactive and protective insights that really complement the work we're doing here at UHP. That's Pathway number 2, Prevention. Make sure you subscribe and give it a listen. Now, back to UHP.
And one of the things about what David's talking about and what David's doing and what has done is create and this is the thing that we want, and this is going back to that movie, Final Cut. We want to make a difference. We want our lives to matter. But accountability is part of that journey. And I think it was Socrates who said, an unevaluated life, or an unexamined life is the correct term. An unexamined life is not worth living. Right. And guys, one of the things about this process of learning and growing and scrutiny and being challenged and being confronted with that which doesn't work is important to help you find that which does. Before we get into your book, and I'm really going to drill down into your book as we go, one of the things you came out, and I want to try and borrow some of the technical expertise from you today, get it out there, David. The guide, one of the works you did was a guide of the 8 professional competencies for higher education substance misuse prevention. Can you give us some really key salient points that people can go, I got that from that work? Is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely. So that particular work, it's free. Just what we wanted to do, and then I had an advisory group. There were 6 of us. We wanted to identify clearly what are some of the skills, the knowledge and the skills, or if you will, the competencies you need to do prevention work, broadly defined. That includes recovery and recovery support. So what are those skills, that knowledge, that application, because it's all about applying what you know. So it's not just knowing about drugs and alcohol. That's not enough. And what we found, and again, this is based in the United States, and I think it applies worldwide, but others can assess that. But the question is, so if we see an issue, if it's a college, this is for colleges. Again, you can adapt it for society as a whole, adapt it for other schools. So what do? Do you do a program? Do an educational program? Do a reading? And so typically what has happened over time is people do a program. They have an awareness day. I mean, in the United States, and again, our research tracks this. You do an awareness day, you do an awareness week, you do an awareness month, and you got that covered for the year. That's not a comprehensive program. So it's based in being a comprehensive program, doing a lot of different things, from policies to programs to support services to evaluation to training, and lots of people involved. So it's not just a designated person. So what do you need? They jump into doing a program or program management. So that's one of our 8 competencies. But there's also something called prevention science. We have much more science today than we had 10 years ago.
Indeed.
We have a lot more science, and there'd be prevention science on other topics too. So, but if you listen to the skills, prevention science, great. Knowledge about drugs and alcohol, Good. Okay. How about strategic planning? So we're not just, ready, fire, aim. It's ready, aim, fire. So strategic planning is a process. And then you want to do needs assessment, but also to couple in evaluation. So did what you do, did it work? There's environmental strategies, which is very important. So you're dealing with that larger environment and policy issues. So all of that is important. So you'll also find in there, you'll see a topic called leadership. Now, that doesn't mean just the boss, the president, the chancellor, the dean, the principal. We all can be leaders in our own spheres. And then there's communication. So it's, while we may know, we may not communicate well. So we can better communicate, whether it's to our audience, so to your audience, Shane, and then to the audience that they're reaching, communicating well, but also communicating to policymakers. Doesn't mean you're going to get your way. So again, we have on our website, so it's on my website, it's Charting Your Course, all one word, chartingyourcourse.net. On that website, if you look under the college tab and you look under strategic planning, and you'll see some guides there. And then also, I've done 8 webinars sitting at this desk. I have interviewed key people on each of our 8 topic areas. So if you want to dive deep just on communication, you can hear me talking with 1 or 2 of the advisory panel members, or just talking about strategic planning. You'll hear me interview one of the people and you can dive deeper. And then within that booklet, again, it's free, it's downloadable. There's resources on each of our 8 areas. So you can look at other resources. So
brilliant.
So the point is, whether you're coordinating or you're part of it, try to speak the same message. And we call this is a key word. This guide is aspirational. This is what we seek to be. So it's not just, can I run a program well, but do I understand the environmental part? Or do I understand substance use disorders as we understand that today? And 10 years from now, we'll have a different and richer understanding of substance use disorders.
Indeed.
And I've shared this with other officials who've said, David, this guide, you take away the drug, alcohol, and the prevention science, but those other skill areas apply to other topics. So leadership, you can apply to other types of communication or environment. That's the nutshell on the prevention competencies guide.
Yeah, and that's a very good resource. That's the reason I wanted to table it and get a bit of salient points from it, because we do want to direct people to the resource, because again, your offering is not just technical and policy and good practice, and it is a narrative building. It's paradigm changing.
Absolutely.
And that's the key issue here with everything we do in culture and society. It's what narrative are you being subject to? What narrative are you buying into? And is this going to add value to you and those around you? And some narratives can present really well, certain aspects of a narrative. And if you can present the excitement or the buzz or the energy, which is, and if you're a particular person who loves, for example, you love data and using your 8 guides, you love data, you love the information about AOD, you're really good at the technical stuff. So you're going to drill down and use your proclivities, your propensities to really highlight that. That's great, but that's not the narrative. That's just a component.
No, and then bottom line, again, this goes back to the professional competencies guide. For each of the competencies we identify, knowledge and skills feed into application. So it's all about how you're going to apply this. So that's to your audience again. How are you going to apply this podcast, the prior ones, the future ones? How are you going to apply what you're gathering together for your own life and for the lives of those that you're touching?
Perfect. Yeah, the information, there's the different forms. There's information, and there's manifestation, and
Absolutely.
there's application, and
Absolutely.
then demonstration. So
Absolutely.
those things all, they're an unfolding. And again, the competencies you need to develop those and life experience. And this is where narratives are formed. And we're going to get into your book right now, Dave. I think it's really important. This is where the personal experience, and again, before the libraries burn down, let's open them up. Before the libraries disappear, let's deploy them in a way that they can continue to echo in their communities.
Exactly.
Well, and the work that you're doing is like that.
Exactly.
And so, now, arguably, this greatest work, I know you think you're working on another volume, but it really is your magnus opus, isn't it? One would argue that
That's
this
fair.
work,
That's fair.
The Intentional Life, Creating a Legacy One Day at a Time. In the preface, you wrote this, and I'm going to read this out. The intention of this book is to help change the foundations and the commitment to broader, richer, and deeper thinking among young adults as they embark on the lifelong journey of life and of living. That is a really succinct primer, I think, for people to get their heads around, because life can be done to you, or you can live life and be an architect in that space, as you've already mentioned. Now, the work is accessible. I mean, I've read aspects of it and parts of it, and it's been absolutely wonderful to do that. It's inspirational, which is great. So we're going back to the old pathos, ethos, and logos. It's all in there. So that's really important. But it's got an equipping motif to it, and that's what I really like. That's the library opening up. It's the deployment. That's the application. That's really profound. But you've actually targeted 7 themes throughout the 365-day journey, and I love the bite size. For me, it is particularly when you talk about perspectives, trying to work out maybe next steps, or shift in direction, or the adaptation or adoption of a new space. Then having these bite-sized perspectives around key themes is really important. Now, your themes are optimism, values, self-care, relationships, community, nature, and service. I love you use blended principles of positive psychology, but also narrative education tool. Again, we use it here. This is what resonates with Delgado Institute. We're very big on narrative theory, narrative deployment, lived experience, and earned resiliency harnessed well with great storytelling is one of the most powerful educative tools going. It really amplifies and energizes pathos magically, and we use that well. Not just telling stories for the sake of a story, but it's harnessed to authentic knowledge that lived experience and earned resiliency people have, and to deploy it in a way that is truly educative, not just an inspirational, emotional story or data deposit, which is not learning. But I love the legacy letter journey. Tell us about how these all evolved, and there's a lot in that, but just talk about your work, David. Just share with us your heartbeat on this.
Yeah, so there's a couple different strands on this. Those 7 themes are really, what do we want to promote? But they came from a think tank surrounding alcohol and drugs with young adults. The think tank was 30 years ago. If one were to do a think tank today, similar process, small groups, discussion facilitated, and then they all had, they had to report out within a minute or two. So those 7 themes, optimism and values came probably from all 23 groups. Nature might have been in 10, but those were the majority themes. And then out of that, real honestly, with my colleague, one of the people I've dedicated the book to, Sally Coleman, who was orchestrating this think tank process at the University of Notre Dame, we then created a book around those 7 themes and then wrote about those themes. So that was the anchor for these. But when I was thinking about this book and how to help young adults think a little deeper, think a little more richly about their lives, how do they learn about how to live? So when I wrote the book proposal for the publisher, it was for all people. And the publishers pushed back and said, focus on one audience. And my key audience that I've worked with throughout my life is young adults. So where they're finishing up high school, they're going to college, they're going into the military, they're going to do some caregiving, they're going to travel, they're going to do other service, they're going to work, whatever their journey. So it's that 18 to 20-year-old. And then I wanted to have contributors from around the world. So I did my reach as broadly as I could. And so 2/3 of the people who contributed, my image was 365. Can I get there? 365 one-page contributions. Because, I think you used the word bite size a bit ago. So this is all bite size, one page. People would submit sometimes too long. What part of one page don't you want? What part of 350 words don't you understand? Don't send me 700. That's 2 page. Anyway, so I would reach out, but 2/3 of the people are people that I have a connection to. Some from high school. I omitted any family member, but some from high school, but people who have had an influence on me. Because my life is made up of my experiences from interacting with them or from their lives, mentors. And so the ages of people, I have one mother and son combination. So the youngest is a 16-year-old and the oldest I think was 93.
Wow.
So I have a mother-daughter, both professionals, and then a mother-son. But all the others were solo. And so the other 1/3 were like, you talk about degrees of freedom. So it'd be like if I reached out, you contributed, Shane, but it was through a mutual contact who knew you and invited you because you were influential to them. So that's 2 degrees of freedom. And that's where the contributions came from. And then I wanted to populate the 7 different themes.
Yeah.
And the whole point of the book is how can we learn and build upon what others' experiences were. My assignment to the writers was give a young adult the best advice you can on some narrow area. Or maybe it's something big that you can write about in 350 words. But the other piece is, again, this is part of the application. Every one of those contributions has a final reflection or an assignment or some to-do for the reader.
Yeah,
so
it's brilliant. It is brilliant part of it. Yep.
Yeah. And so that's what's important. It's like, this is only one page. And I borrow from, the self-help movement with Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, one day at a time. Let's get through today. Let's focus on today. Don't worry about tomorrow. So this has the vision of the future, but it's focusing on today and it's reflective. So the other thing I did, which is hidden in the book, I don't mean to hide it, but it's just there, is I took about 50 international holidays or commemoration days. World AIDS Day, National or International Heart Awareness Month. There was one International Remembrance of the Holocaust. And I had someone who wrote about his parents or grandparents about their experiences at the Holocaust. And so I linked those to certain days. So as I further populate my website and other media outlets, and periodically I will put on my social media and my LinkedIn sites, hey, here's the essay for today. And I don't overdo that. I do probably one a month and put one out there to say, today is World Forestry Day. And I focused on not U.S., but world events, because I think that's important to be as inclusive as possible. I probably have 20, 30 contributors from somewhere outside of the continental United or outside the United States. So inclusive of Hawaii. And so, we have from Australia, we have from Hong Kong, China, Africa. We have 6 out of the 7 continents represented in this book.
Beautiful. No.
So it's people with their own wisdom, their own take, their own advice. These are their words, their thoughts, their heart that they're sharing to help others learn from that. And then if you have people who are reading, like a book club, you might be reading a week's sort of essays, because there's a calendar at the back. So there's
Yes.
yeah, so that's linking today, so that someone doesn't necessarily read straight through. They can do it like they want, but they could. So you get a values one today, and tomorrow you get a self-care, and then the next day you're getting one about community, and the next day is about service. And so, a group discussion could say which one resonated most for you, or which ones did you really, disagree with.
Yep.
I mean, so and how are you going to put this together for your life? Because that's the bottom line. How are you going to apply, whether it's the one essay or the series? So to me, that's kind of how it came together. It was an outreach. I ended up with more than I could use, which was a nice problem to have. I even had contributions come in after the whole manuscript went to the publisher. It's like, my deadline was whatever, like December of 2024, just over a year ago. And then I had some come in February of 2025.
Yeah, wow. Look, it is, and again, you've just articulated beautifully, David. I don't want to reiterate and just, tautologically repeat what you've just said. But for me, the incentivization of this book, this work, is not just its content is vital and powerful and effective for the very reasons you've just articulated. It's inspirational. It draws from diverse cultures and diverse experiences. But its application methodology is really, really helpful. It incentivizes. It's not, okay, read the course material, then do this essay, then, and again, those things are important. Please hear us. If you're going to study something well and do it well, you need to drill down deep and wide. But this is an incredibly important primer. And anybody listening, and particularly young adult, sort of, 16, 25-year-old, this is an incredibly useful tool to not just bring inspiration, but to help you make fundamental initial steps into charting your course, to charting the course of your life, and to leaving a legacy as you go, and that's why the legacy letter journey is so powerful, because when you do this, and I would encourage David, I'll step into your space and bang a drum for you. Those who engage with this resource, and I encourage you to get the work. It's something you can pick up and put down whenever you want. It's not like you have to read it in one sitting. The beauty of this is it's a daily offering. So you might miss a day or two. It's not regimented and disciplined, and all those things are important.
There's no test. There's no test at the end.
No test in the end. And you can revisit these things and move through it. But you can also begin to journal yourself. And you can, those thoughts, ideas, those awakenings, those initiations that lead you on a journey to evaluating not just to your life, but to those around you, then becomes part of the legacy itself. And that becomes a legacy letter. Your life becomes a legacy letter.
Right. So when I was at George Mason University, one of the classes I taught was on drugs and alcohol and healthy decisions. And I would start that class by saying something like this: who remembers something about your great-grandparent? Who remembers something about your grandparent? What sort of legacy did they leave? And it was just a matter of them reflecting for a moment. And then I said, so what sort of legacy are you going to leave? And sometimes I would ask students. I remember one student saying, I want to be in the Olympics. And I said, do you mean as a visitor, like an attendee, like I would want to be? Or do you mean performing? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I want to perform. Do you want a medal? Yeah. Which one? Oh, I want gold. Okay. So then with that is your aim. What are you doing today that helps you get there? And then I would say to the class as a whole, how are your decisions about drugs and alcohol helping you to get to where you want to get? And how are your decisions about drugs and alcohol getting in the way? That's the relevance to this class. And so that was about drugs and alcohol. But the broader question, and again, out of that think tank from 30 years ago, those 7 themes resonate as, what do we want to promote? And I want to emphasize that the first 2 that we highlight in this book, that we highlighted from what Sally and I did, and in this book, optimism. optimism has to be the first. Because if you don't have even an ounce of optimism, you can't proceed. You're paralyzed. So you have to have at least a modicum of optimism. And then values. The question is not their values. What are your values? What values are you going to stand for? You're going to find, one who reads this, some troubling situations that people talk about and how they navigated and whether they listen to themselves or not. And those are the foundations. The other thing, just to highlight, this is not, this has a lot of tools in it, but it's not all the traditional well-being topics. Mm-hmm. You might find a sentence or two about sleep. You might find a few examples about impaired driving or someone who would put anything into their body that they could get their hands on as a substance. So you'll find things about that. You'll find things about recovery, but it's not a book about that. It's a book about in being more intentional for today's decisions, not just for the ultimate end of your life, which faces all of us, but for tomorrow and the next day and, a month from now, a couple of years from now. So that what I found is, there are textbooks. There's many books on well-being, but is there a book of this design? So that's part of what I'm proposing. It's under consideration right now with the publisher and a national organization is taking each of the well-being topics, whether it's spiritual health or social health or vocational or intellectual, but those different dimensions and some specific skills and applications within each of those 8 areas. So it becomes more like a guide without being a textbook. So it's meant to be more engaging and again, targeting the young adult audience. So that's where that's going.
No, brilliant. Well,
I'm also thinking of a third volume, which I won't say any more about now.
Oh, wow.
Then we have a trilogy, Shane.
Correct. So the opus magnus opus is a trilogy. It sounds very Calvin Miller and Tolkien, and yes, it sounds
That'll work. That works.
That's great.
But it's trying to help people move their lives forward in the way that they want,
That's what it is.
In a healthy way.
Yeah, and that's what I want to reiterate. This is not a how-to book, guys.
That's correct.
It's not a how-to book. This is a must-do journey companion. I think that's the key issue. I'm not going to be prescriptive here, but the how-tos, like you said, there are a dime a dozen. This is, again, an incredibly valuable journey guide that's going to just enable you to discover, to craft, to create, to do that which is going to be significant and important. And it may not be Nobel Prize winning, it may not be Olympic gold winning. No. Those things are great. That's not, but this is going to be significant, and the impact you'll have on those around you is vital. That's part of why we do this podcast. David, one last question before we go. We ask 95% of our guests this, not everyone. Is it the fence or the ambulance that are the priorities in your world, or is it a combination of both? Fence at the top of the cliff or the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff?
You're talking about Humpty Dumpty. I think you're talking about Humpty Dumpty.
Yeah.
That's what you wrote your essay on.
Your legacy.
You did. So to me, it's really about the precursor to the fence. We don't want to come up to the fence. It's that roadway, the grassy area. It's nurturing all of that so we don't have to hit the fence.
Beautiful. Good answer.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. And again, it's all about personal choice. And I'm going to go back to that. I'm going to go back to that movie piece. You know what happens at the end of the movie before the credits? The end. So it's all about, this is not, picture that change and put the word not on top of that. It's not the end.
Yeah.
This is the beginning, or this is a new beginning. Each day is a new account. Each day, reinvigorate. It's all a matter of choice. And then it's also, you don't have to do this alone.
Yeah.
Do this with a significant other. Do it with family. Do it with, I don't want to say strangers, but it might be part of a classroom assignment. It might be part of a faith community. It might be a community discussion. Just hey, I read this, just share it. And then share the journey.
Yes. And I like that because it's the catalyst that this brings to the work, but also to your capacity to be an agent of change in your community. As you do this with others and others help you, mentor you or walk with you or journey with you, then guess what, guys? You become that same person, that same agent of help and assistance and growth for someone else.
Yes.
And this work will facilitate that. David, we nearly hit the hour here, which has been absolutely wonderful having you on.
Thank you. You've been marvelous.
Great book. And I just want to direct people to the book. Again, the book that we're promoting here today, really, really important book. And I did have the privilege of being able to make a contribution, which was an honor for me. I didn't want to talk about that, but it was a genuine honor to be asked to do that. And I
you wrote a beautiful piece. Thank you, Shane.
350 words. I managed to do that, which is hard for me because I'm a talking head. Anyway, The Intentional Life, Crafting Your Legacy, One Day at a Time.
Here's what it looks like.
There it is. We'll have it on our, it's going to be on the website. It'll be in the newsletter release of this. And it's also can be found on chartingyourcourse.net, which is David's website, with lots of other resources, including some of the ones we've talked about today. So there's technical data, there's educative tools, there's vehicles for information and policy development, but there's also this fine and very important work. So again, this is a wealth of information. Again, chartingyourcourse.net, Dr. David S. Anderson. Again, it's been an absolute privilege having you here, David. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure and my honor to be part of this. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. And okay, to our listeners, until next time, don't simply avoid unnecessary harm or even just call it out. Be more. Be the resilience-building change agent your community needs. Until then, be safe.
As we wrap up today's session, remember, each step towards understanding is a step away from unnecessary harm. We're here to empower, inspire, and pave the way for optimal well-being. Stay resilient, stay informed, and continue being the change your community needs. Thank you for joining us at the Unnecessary Harm Podcast. Until next time, take care and keep pushing forward.